Slightly smaller than Texas and located south of Egypt, South Sudan is separated from its northern counterpart by the Nuba Mountains. The White Nile River flows through the center of the country and forms one of the world's most extensive wetlands, the Sud. These wetlands give South Sudan its rich soil that expands across its plains. Home to the world's second greatest migration, South Sudan is dazzling, but all that beauty can be gravely misleading. Sudanese and the Nuba Mountains that are fur regions, the Blue Nile State and Kassala, have been skirmishing with the Khartoum regime in the north that is headed by President Bashir, a war crime suspect indicted by the International Criminal Court. The already shady government has been using mass graves to dispose of its victims in similar fashion to the Nazis. Sudan's internal disputes go back a century and a half to the time when Egypt started to colonize the region in the 1870s and created the province Equatoria. Islamic Mahdist insurgents then invaded the area in 1885 and in 1898, ran over through their administration and created Sudan. Christian missionaries flocked into the region and taught English and religion. Sudan became an independent nation in 1956, believing that both the North and South could work together, even though their topography is evidently vastly different. But the Arab Khartoum regime retracted their pledge and instigated civil war. An estimated 2.5 million people died in the following two skirmishes from 1955 to 1972 and 1983 to 2005. During these civil conflicts, the Northern Sudan regime used assault tactics to terrorize the people. The Dinka, the Nuer, the Fur, the Masalit, and the Zangala are just a few of the ethnic groups targeted by Khartoum. Among these brutal tactics were mass starvation by cutting off food supplies, displacement, violent harassment to degrade the spirit, bombing hospitals and schools, raping women and children belonging to certain ethnic groups, destroying cultures by causing ethnic groups to oppose one another. The Lost Boys are just one example of displacement. Around 20,000 Dinka and Nuer children were orphaned during the Second War and moved to Kenya. While they journeyed back home through Kenya and Ethiopia to Sudan, many died of starvation and others were forcibly conscripted into child armies. The survivors were moved to refugee camps or resettled in the U.S., but now many hold high positions in the South Sudanese government, trying to put order back into the tumultuous lives of others and themselves. The most brutal genocide committed during that time was the Boer Massacre, just one example of the northern government using animosity between ethnic groups to their moral advantage. The Boer were a mighty faction of the Dinka, who were enemies of the Nuer. On August 28, 1991, thousands were killed. The Nuer infiltrated villages and killed people left and right. Those who fled were shot, and those who couldn't flee were burned alive. Toddlers were impaled on fence posts and left to die in agony. In January 2005, the end of the Second War, a peace agreement was signed giving the South a 6-year autonomy, at whose end there would be a final vote as whether to secede or not. 98% of the population elected to secede, and the Republic of South Sudan was born on July 9, 2011. But there are still many refugee camps across the country, full of people trying to rebuild their lives. Many Western countries heavily financed the Southern rebels with the anticipation that it would steadily materialize into a steady and secure country amidst surrounding turmoil and chaos. Their hopes were quickly blown out when genocidal militias remained within the region and began, or rather continued, to wipe out entire cultures. South Sudan's administration has allowed the presence of these genocidal militias. Since each militia is only made up of a certain ethnic group, there will be internal fighting among them if someone is offended. These militias have already caused considerable death and destruction. In June 2011, the Dinka and the Nuer amalgamated in a rare moment in Jonglei State and killed around 400 Murli and stole thousands of heads of cattle. The Murli struck back in August to take back their cattle, but killed 600 people in the process. Currently, the Nuba Mountains are a part of the North, even though the Nubian fighters were part of the rebel forces. The Nubian fighters are still in battle with the aggressive chokehold of the northern government that is furtively arming militias to penetrate the southern regions and commit genocide to make a mockery of the South Sudanese security forces. Both countries are grievously reliant on oil, and when South Sudan cut the flow of oil in January of 2012, their economies were utterly crushed. Skirmishes broke out full-fledged along the border in April, and President Bashir worsened the situation by his offensive remark that he had fertilized the soil with their dead. The fighting lasted to September when Bashir and Salva Kiir signed an agreement stating that oil production would be again taken up and the pipeline fee was negotiated, but neither side could come to terms about divvying up the border territory. The Sudanese People's Liberation Movement, or SPLM for short, established the government of South Sudan, and it's an extension of the forces of the Southern rebels. This force is also a political party that now finds itself in the looming position of conceiving federal departments to direct the different aspects of the country. The country is critically in need of access to clean water, food, communication, health clinics, and better roads for safer and easier travel. There are vast resources that go almost completely untouched, with oil being the most common. Diamonds, gold, silver, copper, iron, and chromium ore can also be found. But only if internal disputes get resolved can South Sudan succeed in strengthening its economy by utilizing these vast resources. Currently, its greatest exports include 500,000 barrels of petroleum oil per year and beer. Yes, beer. Before secession, the Islamist government in Sudan stringently adhered to the no alcohol commandment. When South Sudan became autonomous, Sav Miller, a world-known beer manufacturer, took advantage of the situation and in 2009 offered the new country its own brew called White Bull. There is now a fully modern beer factory in a country that makes almost nothing else of its own. Located on the outskirts of Juba, the gist from the southern Sudanese populace is that they are very proud of having their own staple product, even if it is beer.